Hello guys, and welcome to a new Wargame video today by me, Vulcan. Today I am playing with a Danish deck in which I go absolutely crazy with infantry. Somebody requested that I do a Danish video in the last video, so I decided to, and I also decided to use a tank command vehicle. Now, I didn't really use it in the most optimal way, but I still made use of one, and I will go over it again for those of you guys who talked about it in the tutorial video. So the teams are, I'm on a team with Godlike, myself Vulcan, Humble for Strategy, and we're versus Torek, XS3 and Poputone. Now I took the left side on my own, which I was a bit scared about because I don't have any tank support, and then Humble for Strategy with his British units took the left side of this right sector, and Godlike took the right side of this sector. So I started over here on my own. I wasn't too concerned about it with all of the infantry that I had. It's quite easy to defend all this forest and this town with infantry, because it's the only way through here. However, when you go up and try and capture Delta, it's quite hard to hold on your own without any ATGMs or tanks, because it's pretty open, so you got to play it very guerrilla style. Thankfully, the enemy that I was against on this side didn't make use of too many heavy tanks, so I got away with it quite well. Now, I thought I did a really good job in this video of supreme guerrilla infantry tactics, so that's why I'm showing this one to you guys today. And you can see here I'm starting to place out my units, so I'm going to put it to my point of view and go through what my plan was. So I've got a recon jeep here, and I've got a recon tank just for a little fire support. I've also got an M6 Mosgris with a recon squad in it. I've then got six squads of 2 MD Jupiters, which have basically the really cheap Danish infantry in them. I'm not sure exactly their name, and I probably can't pronounce it anyway. And they were basically going to go and spread themselves out in every single building in this sector, so that I had absolute control when tanks started rolling through the area. And I've also got these M113A1s with anti-air support in them, with the anti-air infantry, the hamlets. Then we've got the M113A1s with better infantry squads in them, and then I've brought in another MD Jupiter here. Then I've got 6 more MD Jupiters on the left with the cheap infantry, and then 3 squads of hamlets, AA. Now, the idea of these squads were that they were going to rush up to this tree line here, then they were going to wander straight across this mountain range here, and then attack into this town over here. Now, I've tried this before and it didn't go very well, but I did it with Lynx AH1s, and I flew over there, so it's pretty obvious. But this time I decided to just run the troops over there, and it's going to be quite a lot of troops if you look. So each one of these has 10 men, and there is like 12 of them, so you've got like 120 men going to be running across over there. Now, that took me a little while to work out. So I've hidden my M113A1 CV back here, and I instantly brought in a command tank to come and secure this Delta sector. So you can see here my MD Jupiters and all of the other Jupiters in the area all spreading out into their buildings. You can see them off in the distance there, and I eventually dropped them all out into the different sectors. And then my Centurion comes up and parks himself somewhere in this forest here. I've got my my recon jeep in the edge of the forest here. I've also got this M6 Mosgris, which I eventually drop out the infantry and then run them up to this hill over here, which gives them a good overwatch of this area. Then I've got these MD Jupiters dropping out more of these into this area, and then I've got the AA travelling over to the right side of this sector where it's nice and open, where they might try and fly planes over. Now, the idea of this particular strategy was to go with air domination, so not necessarily by using air units, but by controlling the airspace with anti-air. So I make a lot of use of these M113s with hamlets in them, because as you can see here, I'm moving all of my infantry across in squads, and these hamlet squads are basically going to go to all of these places in the forest where it's open and there's a cliff, and I'm going to sit them there, and then whenever the enemy bring in air units, all of these hamlets can open up and fire at them as they fly across this open area on the left. And then in the meantime, my infantry can rush over to this town and start being a nuisance. Now you can see I'm bringing in Centurion 84mm into the forest on the left side here. These are basically to counteract any infantry pushes and APCs in this particular forest. Now Centurions 84s only cost 15 points, so they're very, very cheap and effective for what they do at close combat. And you can see here my M41 did open fire onto a vehicle in this area. So I've got this place pretty well secured. You can see that the last units of infantry are moving into the last building of this sector. I could have put some units in here, but I was scared that if I pushed up infantry too far that they would just get instantly destroyed, so I decided to put them into the forest on the left here instead, and you can see they instantly bump into some motor strelky. And with the help of my M113 as fire support, my infantry take out the squad reasonably easily, and then they focus fire onto these conquer squads. And go into the trees. Fortunately, we can't see very much except from explosions. But I took out the conquer squad, but then he brings in Spetsnaz, which with the napalm rockets isn't very much fun against my own infantry. And this sort of fighting happens all the way through this, and it's pretty awesome. And you can see here I'm bringing up more infantry reinforcements to deal with all of the stuff in this tree line. So my Centurions are just arriving as well, and they're going to be useful to take on those Spetsnaz at close combat, because the Spetsnaz with their napalm rockets aren't going to be able to do much against Centurions. And you can see here the Centurions have also bumped into these BTRs, and this shulker down the road doesn't last long once it comes past my infantry. Now he does manage to get a lot of bombs off with them Su-24, but it doesn't do too much damage. It destroys one of my tanks, which costs 15 points, so I wasn't too concerned, and the rest of them are still fine. Now I wasn't intending to have them bunched like that, but because I attack moved them, they all stopped in exactly the same place when they found the enemy. So here you can see them starting to spread out again once I can, so they don't get bombed again. And they did damage my infantry in this building a lot, so I have to bring in some extra resupply later on. You can see my Centurions moving on to these Spetsnaz squads, and you can see my Centurions, which only cost 15, have taken out a squad of Spetsnaz worth 30 already. The more bombs come in from another plane and destroy another 3 of my Centurions, but these ones on the left here are still going through and destroying all the light vehicles they come across. These are currently on attack move, and they're moving straight across to the right side to help out. So again, another Spetsnaz squad. Yes, they can stun my Centurions, but they don't do much damage at all. and then I get another 30 points. So that's already paid off those 2 squads. 2 Spetsnaz squads being killed paid off 4 Centurion 84s. Now unfortunately, one thing I didn't really think about was AA at the front line, and because I'm using AA infantry, it takes a long time for it to get to the front line, which can be an issue when dealing with helicopters. And the guy does realise this, and he starts to bring in Mi-24 VPs, which are great against my Centurions just to clear them up. But unfortunately I have nothing to deal with it, so I kind of let him get a few kills onto my Centurions for free. Because these don't actually have much armour, they do take damage from those rocket pods when they hit. But with my Centurions moving through these forests, the helicopters actually can't get a decent shot onto any of these tanks. Now I do have a Hawk back here, which is defending this Centurion that I've got as my command vehicle. These are very, very cheap command tanks. They only cost 170, which is a lot more than a command jeep, which only costs 100, but it's not actually that much. You can see here my hamlets were getting into range of these SU-22s. When they actually become stationary and they take up positions in open areas, they can hit stuff very, very easily. I managed to let an SU-7B over though, and I was pretty scared that this was going to do a lot of damage to my infantry, but unfortunately for him, he does miss it quite significantly, and then I do shoot him down anyway. So my tanks don't have an issue with napalm, so they can just drive out. It's my infantry that I'm worried about, and I do manage to avoid them running through the flames. So you can see here one of my hamlet squads are moving back to this open area here, and this one's moving over to the right side. And in the meanwhile, the Centurions are still pushing over to the right side here because they are currently contesting my sector, and I want to get rid of their command vehicle as quickly as possible. And here I'm dropping out some hamlets to deal with the Mi-24 VPs. Now the reason they're not shooting at them is because these Mi-24 VPs are actually hiding behind this building at the moment, so they are not in line of sight. Now this TO-62s I was worried about, but it wasn't too much of a concern. Here you can see a plane that just crashed, which got shot down by these squads of hamlets that I had in the forest. I managed to scare off his Mi-24 VPs with these hamlets over here. So you can see as the SU-7B flies over, my hamlets are free to fire at them. Unfortunately this one gets through and does manage to drop his payload, but fortunately I shoot it down afterwards. The only thing he napalms as well is my 2 hamlet squads. They only cost 15 points each, and he lost an 80-point plane, so not worth it on his point. Over here you can see that my infantry squads have now got into position, and he's bringing in planes to deal with that, or try to. And in the meantime, my Centurions and infantry are still pushing across. So you can see the Liv Garden, my more experienced troops, are moving across in front of my less experienced troops on the left here. Unfortunately, the Mi-24 VPs get sight onto 2 of the squads of these cheap infantry, but I am taking out constantly units worth 65 points with my really, really cheap infantry. And in the meantime, over here in this town, there's an assault going on where he's desperately trying to push me out of this town. So my men are occupying these buildings, and then all of these BTRs are coming straight out of the spawn and being hit by my own men. Unfortunately, I don't manage to kill all of this infantry. I do a significant amount of damage, and I do spot this UAZ in the back of the sector, which gives me a perfect target for my starfighters. Now my starfighters carry 4 450kg bombs, so only one needed to get through, and I sent 2 just in case the first one gets hit by AA, and it certainly does and gets stunned instantly. So the second one comes through, does manage to get his payload off, and you can see the 4 bombs come down and annihilate him with cluster bombs. Now, I didn't realise they were cluster bombs because I didn't watch that bomb go off originally, so later on you'll see me bring in loads of those starfighters versus infantry, and I realise that is a massive mistake, so please bear with me on that. Over here the fight is still going on with my last couple of squads of infantry and my hamlet squads. They're standing on the side of the hill fighting down at all the infantry coming up. They are in good cover and they have ranked up to veteran, but the overwhelming nature of the amount of troops that this guy brings in is just ridiculous, and eventually they all die. Now, I managed to push this guy out of this sector, and my Jupiters are absolutely fine, so they're going to drive themselves into this forest and stop themselves so that they can refuel my Centurions and repair them as well, while this TO-62 just decides to spread flames all over the place. Now, I'm not sure exactly why he couldn't kill me properly here, but you can see Humble for Strategy on my team actually surrenders quite early on in this game. We're only 12 to 13 minutes in, and already he's surrendered, so it's just me and Godlike versus the 3 enemies on the team. You can see here with the last bazooka that this squad actually has, they take out that TO-62. Now, the Jupiter I bring in to resupply these guys, and also for these hamlets on the left here. See that my hamlets are still got line of sight onto these Mi-24 VPs, so they are still firing at them. Fortunately, the hamlets actually run out of ammunition at this point, so I bring over the Jupiters from the left to resupply them. But the enemy does realise this and does start to shoot at my supply vehicles so that I can't continue to fire the AA. But fortunately, because hamlets are such cheap AA, they actually don't need that much supply to resupply, so they resupply really, really quickly. And this allows my now veteran hamlet squad to get some pretty accurate shots onto the Mi-24 VP. Now, that was one thing I probably could have done a lot better in this particular game, is I could have brought in my units at a higher veterancy. You can see my infantry on the left here only comes in at the lowest level of veterancy, and I could have brought them in at trained or maybe veteran, but I'm not sure. But I think I could have bring them in at trained, and it would have been a lot better than regular, because regular units rout very quickly. Fortunately, because I use a lot of squads, it doesn't make as much of a difference, because the suppression value of the MG3s on these guys are absolutely insane. But either way, that probably would have been a better thing to do, because then the normal assault rifles that these guys have at close range would have been a lot more effective. As you can see here, more reinforcements arriving, and throughout this entire game, if I just swivel around, you can see I've moved all of the AMD Jupiters just so I don't give 3 points back to the base, and you can see how many there are. It's just ridiculous. They just pile up back there. They're only worth 1 point each, but every little helps, so let's not give the enemy what they need. These extra hamlet squads are being dropped into the middle of this sector. Anything that flies over here now is going to get absolutely annihilated, and you can see I've added some Jupiters to resupply them. I've got resupply for all of this infantry over here, and you can see I'm pressing forwards with the infantry on the left, which is bumping into the original infantry that countered me in this town, and then my M113s are bumping into BTRs. Unfortunately, I was just kind of throwing away points here. I would never recommend doing this, because each of these M113s are worth 5 points, and although it doesn't seem like a lot, like I said, every little helps, and if you're sending a lot of them like I am here against these kinds of units, you make these units very strong by veterancy. Also with these Mojostrelki squads, so I don't necessarily want to be doing this. However, I do eventually realise and start reversing them away, because all that's happening at the moment is ATGMs are coming in from the right side and hitting me very, very hard. Now here you can see that I get some help from the guy on the right side, Godlike, who sends in some bombers to take out some of the light APCs that they have in this area, and meanwhile he presses forwards, the enemy presses forwards with his motor Strelky onto my M113s and Centurion after taking out all of my original infantry. Now I do have some extra infantry coming here, but unfortunately it isn't quick enough to really take care of these motor Strelky that take out all of the M113s. Now most of these were taken out by like the Mi-24 VP, but the motor Strelky did a lot of work as well on my M113s. So either way, like I said here, the starfighters come in with their cluster bombs to try and take out the infantry, which isn't ideal, and I accidentally kill one of my own M113s and deal no damage to the enemy infantry. Now that was my mistake. I know that cluster bombs don't do any damage. I just assumed that the starfighters dropped proper bombs, not cluster bombs, so please bear that in mind and don't do that because it's not good. But it does leave a reasonably open space in this forest where the line of sight isn't broken so much. So as my own infantry get round to this place, the Centurion gives decent fire support until it gets destroyed. Meanwhile, on the right side, you can see that my teammate is doing a reasonable good job of holding down Echo, Bravo and Charlie. You see I've put in a couple of M113s here, just dropped out the hamlets. And over here I've brought up a couple of light infantry squads, which because they got taken out of their jeeps, I start running them towards these shulkers on attack move. Now here you can see my infantry is finally coming into contact on the left. Straight into the face of the motor Strelky squads. Now unfortunately I don't really do this properly, because one of my squads got absolutely focused by all these motor Strelky squads that are veteran status. My squad started to disintegrate very, very quickly, but fortunately I managed to get this Centurion 84 up, which does a decent amount of damage and stuns one of the squads, which allows more of my men to get up into position to fire upon this motor Strelky squad and then suppress it to death. But here you can see these veteran squads are officially doomed because they're currently running up against 50 of my own men, and there's only 3 of them now left. You can hear the gorgeous MG3s spraying them to death. Then find out that there's more on the left. My men seem to create their own arc and start firing at these other motor Strelky squads, which aren't as vetted as the ones on the right side. You see if we go down, you can see all the tracers going past. Whoa, look at that, it's crazy. We got an old wreck of my Centurion here as well. Incoming bombs from the enemy there with one of their planes came down and bombed my infantry. I think they accidentally hit their own as well. Unfortunately here, one of my Hamlet squads does get picked off by this BTR-60. So I have to send these 4 squads of infantry to go deal with that and then go and attack these motor Strelky squads down here. Because unfortunately I do lose all of this infantry, but each of these infantry units are only worth 5 points each, similar to their motor Strelky, except from, well, the motor Strelky cost actually 5 points more. So for every 1 motor Strelky squad that I destroy, he has to destroy 2 of my squads. And you can see at this point in the game, we are currently 3,715 points up over their 2,202 points. And I've still got a ton of units in this area. So throughout the game, I just constantly bring up reinforcements here. You can see the MD Jupiters retreating from dropping off these 4 squads here. Now these guys are bumping into their own firefight. See here, they quickly vet up. I probably should have brung them in trained in the first place though, and they wouldn't have got taken out so easily. Because you can see they do just get disintegrated by these motor stroker squads. But these guys work best in numbers, and eventually I worked that out, and with the support of the Centurions I do manage to push them out. Meanwhile, on the right side here you can see I'm pushing forward Centurion 105s, and they have taken out already a couple of BTRs and other valuable units like this Tunguska. Now each of these Centurions are worth 30 points, and they're bumping into things like Sturms and other units that are a lot better, but if I kill any of them I get a lot more points worth. And here you can see I'm actually bringing in starfighters later on. Here you can see they're coming in to take care of these Sturms. Meanwhile, the Mi-24 VP is still firing ATGMs at long range at my own vehicles. Now I really wish that the Danish had ATGMs. Like, that is probably one of the biggest annoyances with this deck. There is no ATGMs and there's no heavy tanks. So you really lose against enemy heavy tanks. There's not really much way to destroy them unless they come into close combat with your infantry. You see it, but you can see here my starfighters do manage to take out a couple of Sturms. Unfortunately, one gets shot down, and I bring in a few more cluster bombs. These ones hit their artillery, which is really nice. Get a nice 150 points there, and another unit gets destroyed here as well, which actually is Mi-24 VP. So I do a decent amount of damage for this push. Although all of my Centurions are now burning, it did allow me to pick up on quite a lot of points and put me 1,890 points overall. Now meanwhile on the right side, Godlike is doing a really good job. Almost you could say a godlike job of attacking the right side. He's got 3,365 points, and you'll see at the end he has an amazing kill-death ratio. I was glad to have him on my team after Humble for Strategy left. Then you can see my Centurions and M113s again moving up against the infantry that's in this forest. I still have all of these AA units in this on these mountain ranges over here, so if any more air units came in I could kill them very easily, and that's what provided me with a lot of my points throughout the game actually, is this air domination with the light anti-air. So I bump into a Sappery squad, and because this is a flame unit obviously they're not going to do much damage against my armoured units, so there are a bunch of free kills there. Meanwhile on the right here my Centurions taking pot shots at the Razvedka. Fortunately gets hit by a couple of ATGMs and then dies. But then in the meantime my M113s are just having a whale of a time firing free onto the Sappery, which is dealing no damage back. You can see there, as the tanks actually arrive, they just almost one-shot some of the squads. You can see Torak surrenders with only 150 points to go. I'm starting to bring up some more Centurions to do another push, because I believe that caught him out last time. So I was going to attempt to do it again. But before I get the chance, Godlike actually finishes the game for me by bringing in some air support. You see the Centurions are continuing to press forwards with the M113s, and I have already taken out a couple of squads. But unfortunately, because the flames stun, they do slow down the progress quite significantly. But like I said, with the starfighters coming in to finish the job, that is pretty much good game. So there you go, guys. Major victory on our part. A 3v3 on Stavanger. I got 1,950 kills and 1,457 losses, and Godlike got 3,975 kills and 2,185 losses, which I thought was very, very good and worked out very well. My own kills and losses I wasn't too pleased about, but I thought it went well considering the strategy. With those kinds of strategies, it's always a small lead that you need. Because my units aren't worth very many points, a small lead is perfectly fine, because if they destroy any of my units, I don't lose too much. So having that lead was all I really needed. And you can see just by the strategy, often that's actually quite a good outcome for the amount of infantry that I lost in that. So if I scroll down, you can see I lost a ton of infantry, like absolutely loads. I think I have about 100 and something of those squads on my deck. Also a load of centurions as well. And although I lost that many troops, they don't cost very much, so it's fine. Either way, that was another look at a Danish deck. If you're wondering what the setup was, it was a Danish 1975 deck, so pre-1975 units plus 80% availability for the infantry squads. So there we go. You can get ATGMs, I believe, if you take a later deck, but for the Danish I always felt more was better, especially for that really cheap infantry, which has MG3s, which is really powerful. So there you go, guys. Hope you enjoyed this gameplay. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.